Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to US states impossible to invade. Now the US as a whole is what I would say impossible to invade. It's probably the best secured country in every way possible. But then certain states within the US I feel like would fight back even more. I mean, I don't know necessarily if that's true, but the southern states, for example, I feel like they would just be relentless in not allowing anyone to try and invade them and get through and take over or whatever it is. That's just an example. I just feel like the southern states will definitely be the states that are going to be even harder to invade. But every US state, I mean, some US states are have quite a low population and then have a lot of land, just like open space, which I guess in reality could make it quite easy to invade. Like the Dakotas, for example. I mean, I feel like a lot of people there will own guns and stuff, but there's so little people and so much land that's just free. That probably is a factor, but we're going to check this out. Hopefully going to enjoy, and obviously this is a sort of a video idea. It's not anything that's ever going to happen, probably, but yeah, should be interesting. Hopefully going to enjoy, and let's check this out.
As a nation, the United States stands resolute. Even if all of the country's enemies raised their forces and struck simultaneously, the vast resources, formidable military, and resilient spirit of the nation would undoubtedly prevail. As a whole, the US is nigh on uninvadable. But that's the important part, only as a whole. But what about the individual states? How would they fare in the face of an invasion? Today, we're going to find out which US state would be the most vulnerable in the face of a modern invasion, and which would stand as an impenetrable bastion. There are virtually no lists discussing the hardest US states to invade that don't rank this non-contiguous US state at least near the top. And for good reason. Alaska's location.
Alaska? I guess actually a location. That's actually a very good point. It's just so hard to get to in the first place.
In the far northwest of North America provides a formidable defense. Its rugged terrain, thousands upon thousands of miles of icy landscapes, and vast uninhabited expanses creates natural fortifications that would challenge even the most determined invader. The state's freezing temperatures, which once reached nearly 80 degrees below zero Fahrenheit or 62 degrees below zero Celsius in Prospect Creek, serve as an additional deterrent, making any attempted invasion a perilous endeavor. That's not to mention how challenging getting the invasion forces to Alaska would be in the first place. Most of the 34,000 miles of Alaska's shorelines are virtually impossible to land on. At the same time, any ground invasion would have to go through the 1,450-mile-long Canada-Alaska border, which features some of the wildest and most challenging terrain in North America. Simply put, invading Alaska would be a logistical nightmare. But for argument's sake, let's say the invading force does get through the rugged terrain and icy weather somehow. What will wait for them on the other side is a rather robust military presence. With over 665,000 square miles of land but only 733,000 inhabitants, Alaska is the most sparsely populated state in the US. However, this also means that it has the second highest concentration of military servicemen in the US, with 20,757 active duty service members and another 7,266 National Guard and Reserve members. There are also 9 military bases based in Alaska. Clean Air Force Station Base in Denali Borough, USCG Juneau Coast Guard Base in Juneau, Marine Safety Unit Valdez Coast Guard Base in Valdez, ISC Kodiak Coast Guard Base in Kodiak Island, Fort Greely Arm Base, Eelson Air Force Base, and Fort Wainwright Army Base, all near or in Fairbanks, and the Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson in Anchorage. At Fort Greely, the Army houses the ground-based Mid-Course Defense Anti-Ballistic Missile System, making Alaska one of only 2 U.S. states to possess such a crucial defense capability. This major component of the U.S. missile defense strategy enhances Alaska's own defenses, which are already formidable. Fairbanks, where Fort Greely is located, is also one of the top defense spending locations in Alaska, with $451.4 million spent in 2022, while Anchorage accounts for about a quarter of the state's $4 billion defense spending in 2022. Besides the heavily fortified military bases, Alaska boasts quite a few forts that can be used as defensive strongholds. These include Fort Hall, located on the Kenai Peninsula, and Fort Abercrombie on Kodiak Island. As you can see, Alaska is a heavily fortified hub that can withstand an intense and prolonged invasion attempt on its own. But that's just the thing. Alaska would have to do it mostly on its own. Just as the enemy forces would have a hard time reaching the state, any reinforcements and resources would also face significant challenges due to the state's isolation. Since Alaska shares no land border with the US, the only 4 interstates in the state, A1, A2, A3, and A4, are severely limited in their reach and connectivity. And that's why Alaska doesn't actually claim the title of the hardest US state to invade on our list.
I'm trying to think which states it actually would be.
The next state we'll discuss
California?
certainly has no issues
Because I know California has a lot of like military strength and stuff.
with connectivity. One of the busiest interstates in the US, I-95, hugs its southern coast. Does that advantage make it one of the most difficult to invade? Let's head to Connecticut and find out. In addition to I-95, Connecticut is served by 5 more interstates: I-84, I-91, I-291, I-384, and I-691. Connecticut's strategic location in the Northeast Corridor also provides it with access to major urban centers like New York City and Boston, further enhancing its logistical advantages. Unfortunately, that's about it for Connecticut. The 48th smallest U.S. state has only 4 major military installations, with only 2 of them being traditional military bases: the Marine Safety Center Marine Base and the Naval Submarine Base New London in Groton. The remaining 2, the Coast Guard Academy in New London and the Research and Development Center Coast Guard in Groton, do contribute to Connecticut's defense, but focus more on training and research rather than active military operations. And in fact, the U.S. Army, Navy, and Marine Corps all have precisely 0 bases in the state of Connecticut.
I feel like because it's between the state of New York and then Massachusetts, it's just sort of in between, so it's not going to have all these defense systems, because I feel like they'll probably be in those states that I mentioned. But I don't know why it was, he said it, I guess it's because it's one of the easiest to invade possibly. Although again, it's surrounded by states that I feel like have a lot of power, so maybe not.
Nature is also not much of a help when it comes to defending the state of Connecticut. Sure, there are some natural barriers like the Connecticut River, which cuts through the center of the state, and the Bear Mountain, which is some 2,300 feet in elevation. However, these features are relatively minor compared to the more substantial geographical defenses found in other states. Connecticut is also the 4th most densely populated state in the US, which makes any defense logistic planning a lot more complicated. Alright, it's not looking great for Connecticut in the event that they're invaded, but to be fair, Connecticut seems to be well aware of its shortcomings, which is why the state has seen the highest increase in Department of Defense spending in 2022. The state ranked among the top 10 spenders for the year with $22.3 billion, spent primarily in 3 locations: New London, Hartford, and Fairfield. This willingness to invest more in defense has saved Connecticut from being ranked as the easiest U.S. state to invade on our list.
Damn.
Though Connecticut is escalating its military spending, it's still far from matching the next state we'll discuss: California.
There we go.
With 56.2.
Just because of the money that the state has alone, I feel like it's obvious it would be here. But they have a lot of defense systems, right?
$2 billion spent on defense in 2022, more than twice that of Connecticut. California ranks as the 3rd biggest spender in the U.S. Given the
Look at Virginia, by the way. Damn.
sheer number of defense contractors, research institutions, and military bases located in California, this figure shouldn't be surprising. In terms of contract spending, as much as $11.9 billion was spent just in San Diego in 2022. San Diego is where some of the largest U.S. military installations are based. The installations in question are the Camp Pendleton Marine Corps Base with over 42,000 active duty military personnel, and the San Diego Naval Base with over 24,000 military personnel.
Damn.
But these 2 military bases are only a tiny fraction of California's insane military presence. In fact, the state is ranked number 1 for the total number of military bases within a single state. Some of these bases include the Sierra Army Depot Army Base in Herlong, the Military Ocean Terminal Concord Navy Base in Concord, Los Alamitos Joint Forces in Los Alamitos, Camp San Luis Obispo Army Base in San Luis Obispo, Camp Roberts Army Base in Monterey, Los Angeles Air Force Base in El Segundo, Edwards Air Force Base in Edwards, and Fort Irwin Army Base in Barstow. And that's not even all of them. As you can see, if an invasion of the state was ever attempted, California appears more than ready for the challenge.
Plus, there's mountainous regions, there's loads of things that you can factor in as well.
This readiness is also the result of the highest number of active duty personnel stationed within a single state, with 158,784 troops. If more troops or equipment are necessary, they can arrive in California hassle-free. After all, almost 30 interstates crisscross the state, providing a seamless network for rapid troop movements and logistical support, including major thoroughfares like I-5, I-10, and I-15. The same goes for the many coastal bases that enable quick naval and air force deployment. However, California's 840-mile coast can be seen as a disadvantage. While the rest of the state's geography, which includes both the highest and lowest points in the contiguous U.S., Mount Whitney and Death Valley respectively, mostly works in its favor, the easily accessible coastline introduces numerous defense vulnerabilities. That's why California, despite all its military might, isn't ranked number 1 on our list of the hardest U.S. states to defend. Speaking of military might, that's precisely what the next U.S. state we'll examine lacks. With only 290 active duty personnel stationed in the state,
What?
Vermont has
Vermont? What? Wait, what? How is that even possible?
one of, if not the weakest military presences in the entire U.S. It doesn't get better when discussing the total number of military bases available in the state. There are only 2. One is located in Burlington and the other in Northfield, and they both house the Vermont Air National Guard. The biggest threat the last base poses is that it houses the 158th Fighter Wing, which was the first Air National Guard unit to serve as home to the F-35A Lightning II fighter jets, aka the world's most advanced combat aircraft. However, that's pretty much where the military and technological achievements of Vermont end. In 2022, this state was ranked last by the Department of Defense based on defense spending. Only about $600 million was spent for these purposes, with 90% going to equipment and supplies. In terms of defense personnel locations, Chittenden in northwest Vermont had the most significant presence, with $276.7 million spent on defense contracts and $130.2 million spent on personnel. Since Vermont would be in desperate need of more troops and equipment in case of an invasion, it's worth examining the state's connectivity network. In a word, this network can be described as poor. Only 4 interstates serve the state: I-89, I-91, I-93, and a small segment of I-189. These highways, while crucial for regional travel, do not provide the extensive infrastructure necessary for rapid, large-scale troop movements or the transport of heavy military equipment. Additionally, Vermont's rural and mountainous terrain further complicates logistics, making it challenging to quickly mobilize and support military forces within the state. This terrain, however, can be somewhat of a lifeline to Vermont in case of an invasion, especially when you consider how well Vermont's militia has adapted to these conditions. Remember, this wouldn't be the first time guerrilla warfare managed to successfully repel an invading force. So, although Vermont ranks last on many national lists, it doesn't rank last among our easiest states to invade. While Vermont may see some immense benefits from its geography, our next state does as well. So let's go to the state that you may be surprised to learn has arguably the most natural defenses of any state in the country: Virginia. To the west, there are the
I based off the list of the amount spent, I was sort of assuming it would be up there. I was shocked when I saw though. But yeah, they've got the mountain ranges, they've got a lot going for it, to be fair. Plus, it's very close to the capital city as well, so I guess that maybe adds more to the need of spending money for defense. But here we go.
Appalachian Mountains, which are legendary in their own right. The dense forests and rugged terrain of the Appalachians are ideal for defense strategies and guerrilla tactics, providing ample cover and challenging pathways for enemy movements. Additionally, the Shenandoah Valley, nestled within the Appalachians, serves as a natural corridor that can be easily defended. Similarly, the Chesapeake Bay, located to the east, offers extensive river systems that can be strategically used to control access and movement. That's why it shouldn't be surprising this bay houses quite a few historical forts, such as Fort Wool, which could be used to bolster defensive efforts. The entire 7,213-mile-long coastline is fortified by naval bases and ports, creating a virtually impenetrable shield. Speaking of military bases, Virginia has dozens of them, ranking in the top 5 of U.S. states in this category. More importantly, Virginia is home to the country's largest military base, the Naval Station Norfolk, which houses over 82,000 military personnel.
Wow. Look at this place, by the way. Jeez.
Now, other notable bases distributed across all military branches include the Marine Corps Air Facility Quantico in Quantico, Fort Belvoir Army Base in Fairfax, Langley Air Force Base in Hampton, NAS Oceana Naval Base in Virginia Beach, and the National Maritime Center Coast Guard in Arlington. Besides an impressive number of military bases, Virginia also boasts a significant number of active duty troops, 125,162 to be precise. According to these 2022 estimates, Virginia is second only to California. However, when it comes to military spending in 2022, Virginia comes on top. But Virginia doesn't just trump California in military spending, it trumps all the US states. With $62.7 billion spent in 2022, almost 10% of its state gross domestic product, or GDP, Virginia demonstrates unparalleled commitment to national defense. Approximately 26% of this figure was allocated to equipment and technological advancements, with as many as 8 cities scoring defense contracts worth at least $1 billion. Those 8 cities are as follows: Fairfax with $17.8 billion, Arlington with $4.4 billion, Newport News City at $3.6 billion, Norfolk at $3.2 billion, Virginia Beach City at $2.2 billion, Prince William at $2.1 billion, Alexandria City at $1.7 billion, and Loudoun.
Bro, and they're all in these regions. So obviously DC's here, isn't it? So I wonder if it is related to that. I'm not sure, but that is crazy.
With $1.2 billion. Of course, all these figures are warranted, given that the headquarters of the very epicenter of the U.S. military strategy and operations, the Pentagon, is located in Arlington County. Though there are a few reasons for this, Virginia's strategic location is chief among them. You see, Virginia is located within easy reach of important military defense hubs, thanks to major transportation networks. As many as 16 interstate routes crisscross the state, facilitating rapid movement of troops and equipment. These routes include I-64, I-66, and I-95, which connect Virginia with key military installations and supply routes across the eastern seaboard and beyond. As impressive as Virginia is, it lacks the sheer resilience and tradition of disaster preparedness that our number one choice has.
Wait, so is this sort of saying that the state has to go through stuff to be able to truly be impossible to invade? Is that sort of what he's hinting at?
But before we reveal the hardest US state to invade, let's spend some more time on the opposite end.
I mean, Vermont, there's no way there's anything that comes close to Vermont.
Of the spectrum. Among the states that, while vital in other respects, simply don't offer the same level of defense against potential invasion. Delaware might be known as a financial services hub, but it certainly doesn't match up when it comes to defensive capabilities. In the entire 2,500 square miles of Delaware, there's only one major military base, the Dover Air Force Base in Dover. This means there are no Army, Navy, Marine Corps, or Coast Guard bases in the state. Approximately 3,339 military personnel are assigned to this base, which is 96.6% of all active duty soldiers in the state, according to 2022 estimates. Delaware doesn't excel in technological capabilities either. The 2022 military budget saw only $700 million spent on defense, with only 11% of it going to supplies and equipment. These funds were distributed among 3 locations: Newcastle, Kent, and Sussex, with the third one receiving only a tiny fraction of the total budget compared to the first 2. But the lack of technological capabilities isn't the only aspect that makes Delaware vulnerable. A lack of significant natural barriers, flat terrain, and high population density also contribute to that vulnerability. With this in mind, it shouldn't be surprising that this second smallest state in the US could be invaded relatively easily. The only saving grace for Delaware is its proximity to major metropolitan areas, which could potentially facilitate a rapid response or intervention from nearby states, potentially via one of the 3 interstates in the state: I-95, I-295, and I-495. The same can't be said for the weakest state on our list, which is located further away to
Wait, we're still not at the weakest
the
state?
northeast. But we won't travel there just yet. For now, we'll travel in the opposite direction on the map, the southwest,
Texas.
to reveal the state we deem the hardest to invade in the US. If you know anything about the US's history, geography, and military, you probably won't be surprised by our number 1 pick. It's the one and only Texas. Trying to invade the Lone Star State would probably be the biggest mistake any adversary could make. Why? Because there isn't a single aspect that works against the formidable defenses of Texas, which is well on its way to becoming the most powerful state in the entire US. Let's look at some facts. Texas has a robust military presence, with 112,583 active duty personnel recorded in 2022. Add the reservists in, and you have 177,072 people ready to defend Texas to the bitter end. These servicemen are deployed across dozens of military bases, 2 of which rank among the top 10 largest military installations in the world. The bases in question are the Fort Hood Army Base in Killeen, with over 70,000 military personnel, and Fort Bliss Army Base in El Paso, with over 20,000 servicemen. However, the U.S. Army isn't the only branch present in Texas, one of the favorite states for the military. So are the U.S. Navy and Air Force. Here's a quick overview of the major bases in this military powerhouse. San Antonio, renowned for its strong military presence, is home to several critical bases: Martindale Army Airfield Army Base, Camp Bullis Army Base, Lackland Air Force Base,
What, within the actual city?
Brooks City Air Force Base, and Fort Sam Houston
There's like there's 5 army bases in San Antonio. What?
Army Base. And there's many
Jeez.
other notable bases too. Texas is also heavily investing in its defense infrastructure, reflecting its strategic importance. The 2022 $58 billion military budget focused primarily on equipment and supplies, with 68% spent in this area. Meanwhile, 26% went to the servicemen and 6% to research and development. As much as $18.6 billion in defense contracts was allocated to Tarrant County, the home of Fort Worth, famous for its aviation and aerospace industries. Though Texas doesn't lack any military force, any additional forces and equipment could reach the state swiftly, thanks to its central location served by over 20 interstates. There's also terrain diversity, from rugged hills and vast deserts to dense forests and sprawling plains. Each region presents a unique challenge for the invading forces. Throw the 3 rivers forming natural state borders, the Rio Grande, Red River, and Sabine River, and it becomes obvious that Mother Nature contributed to Texas being a virtually impregnable fortress against any would-be invaders. And let's not forget about the size of Texas. At 268,820
Huge.
square miles, Texas is the second largest U.S. state, behind only Alaska. So even without all the military bases, personnel, and technology, the sheer expanse of the Lone Star State would make it nearly impossible to invade and quickly subdue. Though, let's be honest, even if there was no military, the citizens of Texas might rise to defend the state on their own.
For sure.
Which brings us to the last reason why this state is ranked number 1, Texas pride. While this metric admittedly can't be measured as accurately as military might and natural barriers, it's a force to be reckoned with nonetheless. Texas pride is a powerful, unyielding sentiment that binds the state's residents together with an almost mythic sense of duty and resilience, captured in 2 simple words: Texas forever. State pride is also precisely what the weakest state on our list misses, according to many polls. Well, pride and quite a few other crucial defense aspects. The less than
So what state is it going to be?
flattering title of the easiest US state to invade.
It's going to be a New England state, isn't it? The annoying thing is, at the start of the video, I was going to say New England, so I said the South, I feel like will be in this video, which to be fair, hasn't really been. I guess it's just sort of in the middle for all of it. But I was also more thinking about the residents. But then I was going to mention that I was going to say New England states. I don't know why, I just assumed maybe they would be. And I guess we're back here again. So we've had Vermont. I guess maybe like Maine.
Belongs to Rhode Island.
Rhode Island. Oh, actually, that makes sense. It's very small.
Why? Simply put, everything about
Also, it's not even a New England state, is it? So that's me talking out my ass.
Rhode
So Connecticut and then Rhode Island, just next to each other. Damn.
Island is small.
And Vermont's nearby as well. This area, I guess, just doesn't really care that much. I guess they've got more things to worry about, possibly.
At 1,214 square miles, Rhode Island is the smallest U.S. state, instantly making it an easy target. The state only has around 3,000 active duty personnel, which is a fraction compared to numbers found in most other states. There are only 3 military bases, none of them representing the Army or the Air Force. One among them, the Station Point Judith USCG Narragansett, uses only 30 people and a few boats to conduct operations in almost 70 miles of coast. There are also only 3 interstates crisscrossing the state: I-95, I-195, and I-295, which leaves minimal routes for rapid deployment and defense reinforcements. And finally, Rhode Island's military budget for 2022 was $1.6 billion, only 23% of which was spent on equipment. The largest chunk of this money was invested in a single city, Newport, leaving the rest of Rhode Island to rely on limited resources and minimal infrastructure. Other aspects of Rhode Island's geography would also do little to help it repel an invasion on its own. The state is mostly flat, with Jeremoth Hill at only 812 feet above sea level serving as its highest natural point. Also,
Wow.
virtually the entire Rhode Island can be quickly reached from the water's edge, allowing a would-be invader to easily approach from multiple directions. In approximately 45 minutes, an invading force could traverse the state's entire perimeter, overwhelming its spare defenses and swiftly establishing control. There are few, if any, natural barriers to slow them down. Luckily, this is all theoretical, and our ocean state likely won't have to deal with any similar scenarios. But
Yep.
what do you think are the easiest and hardest US states to invade? Was our list accurate? Share all your thoughts.
Well, there we go. I mean, this is a very interesting one to see the polar opposites of like the strongest and then the weakest. Hello, we've been invaded for years now, attacking from within. That's deep, man. You didn't talk near enough about some states' largest advantage, civilian-owned arms, which is what I was thinking about at the start of the video. The United States citizens are the largest military force in the world, even larger than our own military. But yeah, this is a sort of like look over the strongest states, the states that spend the most money on military, whether it's building stuff or paying people or whatever it is, studying how to find new things. But yeah, this is an interesting video. Hopefully you enjoyed. It is actually mad to think that Rhode Island has less than multiple cities within Virginia. But hey, I guess that's just how it is. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this reaction, and until next time, subscribe and peace.